Xbox Series X games. Here we go. Here's some new next gen stuff.
Yeah.
Xbox Series X games won't hit 60 frames per second performance target.
Some. You missed the key word there.
Some. I meant some. But who called this? Who said Bob was crazy?
I mean,
I'm not crazy. Anyway, I'll read it. This is from Ars Technica. With the added power of the Xbox Series X, Microsoft has been touting 4K resolution gaming at 60 frames per second as a new console standard. In recent days, though, we've been learning that not all Xbox Series X titles will be achieving that standard. Back in March, Microsoft announced that 4K 60 frames per second level as the performance target for Series X games. Microsoft wanted to build a next-generation console that could run games in 4K at 60 frames per second with no compromises for developers. The company said, and Microsoft's Aaron Greenberg later tweeted that 60 frames per second should be considered the standard output for Series X games. But that target isn't a guarantee that all Series X games will run at 60 frames per second. And Ubisoft made that much clear in a recent statement to IGN. Here is the statement. Assassin's Creed Valhalla will run at a minimum of 30 frames per second. On Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we are committed to offer the best experience to our players by immersing them in the most beautiful worlds and environments we could create, and leveraging not only the graphics enhancements offered by the next generation consoles, but also faster loading times and the new architectures. Microsoft further clarified the situation in a series of tweets to The Verge's Tom Warren. Quote, ultimately, it is up to individual developers to determine how they leverage the power and speed of Xbox Series X, the company said. Developers always have flexibility in how they use the power, so a standard of common 60 frames per second is not a mandate. So basically, we know that Assassin's Creed is going to be 30. Or it'll run at a minimum of 30. So it might
And you know what?
Vary.
That's fine. As long as it's consistent, that's fine.
It doesn't sound like it's consistent because they said a minimum of 30. But I mean, games like that, there's times where like it could run at 30 during cutscenes and 60 during gameplay. That's a thing that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But they said a minimum of 30, which we knew this was going to happen. We knew that not all games were going to hit that 60 frames per second target. And I'm totally cool with that. I'm totally cool with games using other aspects of the hardware to boost other things like the triangle count or the lighting, you know. You don't always need 60 frames per second. But I told all y'all mother effers this is going to happen, and I got a lot of pushback for that. But I don't understand why. It's very clear that we don't freaking have that now with freaking PS4 and Xbox One. Why? What makes you think all games are going to be 4K 60 frames per second?
I know like 60 is the ideal for most people, and the assumption is with the systems being much more powerful, 60 is, you know, a constant 60 is more attainable than ever before, but it's what you do with the rest of the game that matters. How much HDR are you using? Is the game running in full 4K? How many triangles are you implementing from Unreal 5? You know, all that affects frame rate.
I think one of my favorite examples is The Order 1886.
Yeah,
because that was a beautiful game like before it came out when they were showing demos of it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was very cinematic looking. And people were upset that it was only running at 30 frames.
Yeah.
And they said, this is a stylistic choice. It's to make it look more cinematic. Personally, I think they should have just went all in and made it 24 frames a second.
Oh,
I think they should have made it super cinematic. Because, I think the Order 1886 looks better for not being 60 frames per second. Because it does look like a movie. Turns out the game just wasn't that great. But it was a beautiful game.
It was a great tech demo.
Yeah, so if you're talking about like a high paced or like first person shooter that you need those frames dumped into your eyeballs, if you need that twitch reaction, then you're gonna need 60 frames per second. Like if you're playing Valorant on a on a console or something. But for Assassin's Creed, whatever looks best,
Yeah.
whatever they got to do. It's not the end of the world having a low frame rate. Now, I want to ask you something, Will.
Okay.
There's been some debate around the YouTube sphere. Austin Evans tweeted this the other day. He said 30 frames per second better than 60 frames per... No, 30 frames per second better than... I think he might have said 60. But anyway, he means for video. Right?
For what we do, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For YouTube. And all the comments were like, no, 60 is the best, because they don't realize that he's just talking about video.
Yeah.
Or they know he's talking about video, but they're still comparing it to video games.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
No. For video, like regular ass video, anything more than 30, things start to get weird.
Right.
I'll never forget back when, do you remember The Hobbit, kids? When that movie came out, the big technological advancement for it was going to be 48 frames a second rather than the traditional 24, because that would make things run smoother. It might actually affect the look of the overall video. And at the time, I thought, oh, that makes more sense than 3D or some of the other gimmicks they were making, because that would help, with the smoothness of everything. Well, when it came time to actually watch The Hobbit, it was the most bizarre thing. It was too smooth. So nowadays, no movie uses 48 frames a second. They all use 24. And video, it's a little different. That runs in 30 frames or 29.97 if you want to get technical, because it just looks better. 60 is almost too fast for, live action video content.
So right now I'm in 60.
Right.
Will's not, because you were using Google Hangouts, but I'm at 60.
Yeah.
And it is a little weird. My videos I shoot in 24 because I just think it looks nice.
Mm-hmm.
I've shot videos in 60 before, and I get two types of comments. People saying, you look weird as hell, and people saying, 60, nice. And I think it's just because they see the 60, like cogwheel.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, this is awesome. Not that it actually looks nice. I think they just think like, oh, my games that run in 60 look nice, so this video must look nice because it's in 60.
Yeah.
Now what I do is I put the timeline in 60 frames per second, but I shoot my videos at 24. So the game plays 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
And then people see the cogwheel and go, oh, nice, even though I'm still in 24 frames.
Yeah. I would say, like, you can, like, I've seen people do that where, like, they'll film themselves in, like, 24 or 30, but, like, all the gameplay stuff is 60, and that looks fine.
Yeah, which is like a big no-no, and a lot of other people have asked me about that.
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to mix frame rates. But my keyboard disconnected. You're not supposed to mix frame rates, but that's for, like, that's if you're shooting a movie, like, all live action.
Yeah.
Because that's jarring when you switch back and forth. But if you're switching to gameplay, it's not a big deal. Yeah. And I haven't had any problems in my timeline doing it that way, even though it's like a big no-no. But what was it? Mad Max Fury Road. That tripped me up when I saw that in theaters.
Yeah.
Because they sped up and slowed down the footage just however they felt. Well, and the frame rate was not consistent.
Well, that's a little different because most of the times in movies when they do that, they'll, the camera will be set to film at a certain frame rate and then either get sped up to 24 or slowed down to 24 in order to achieve the look that they want. So, for example, something like in Return of the Jedi, when they're on the speeder bikes, the footage of the trees passing by, that was filmed at 1 frame a second and then sped up to 24, so it goes much faster.
Yeah, but Mad Max, I don't think they did it like that. I think they sped it. I think they shot in 24 and then sped things up and slowed them down, but didn't change the final output. You know what I mean? Like they just let all of the frames just erupt on your eyeballs.
Yeah.
And that tripped me up. I mean, it was edited well. I'm not knocking on the editing. I just think I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
Because I remember in the very first scene, there was like a lot of like running around and it was going nuts. And I was like, I don't know if I can keep my eyes on the screen right now. And I was asking my friends about that and they were like, I didn't notice anything. And I think it's because I'm trained to watch that stuff when I play video games. I'm trained to look for frame dips. And that happened and I almost had an aneurysm.
According to someone who worked on Mad Max, something like 50 or 60% of the film is not running at 24 frames a second, which is the traditional frame rate. It'll run below 24 frames because George Miller, the director, said if he couldn't understand what was happening in the shot, he'd slowed it down until you could, or if something was too well understood, he'd shorten it or speed it back up towards 24. His manipulation of every shot in that movie is intense.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So, but if you were to rip Mad Max Fury Road from Blu-ray and like put it in Adobe Premiere, it will be in 24 frames a second. The movie is in 24 frames a second, but certain shots are not. They're sped up or slowed down.
That's yes.
Yeah, they're not filmed in 24 frames a second.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But the movie is in 24 frames a second. It has to be.
I don't know. See, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. like it has, the timeline has to be a certain frame rate. The whole thing has to be a certain frame rate. Like we know that. Like my videos, the timeline is 60. I shoot in 24, but the timeline's 60. What is the max frame rate that happens in Mad Max Fury Road? Is it 24? Because it might not be.
It would have to be.
But it could be 48. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it might not be. Well, all right, we have to take a Blu-ray rip of Mad Max Fury Road and run it through something.
I will do that after this podcast. It might take a while because the programs I use to rip Blu-rays take forever.
Right.
But I will get back to you.
Anyway, is there like a program you could run it through that tells you per like? Well, I have actually. So I don't know why. So when we'll talk about this later also. But I played the Mario PC port,
right?
And I was trying to figure out how the NVIDIA settings you can make it so there's like a thing in the corner that tells you the frame rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't figure out how to do it. But ever since then, all of my windows now have a frame rate in the corner. Like it has it in OBS and it's always changing.
Yeah.
So I might be able to play the Blu-ray rip and just watch the corner and see if it moves. But anyway, that's what you need because you can't take the whole thing and see what the frame rate is. You have to see if it changes throughout the thing.